Good evening, Bulls fans. This is Matt Gritzenmacher. I'm joined, as always, by John McWinney. It's Sunday night. We're half an hour delayed. We've got less stuff to talk about after taking last week off. Still not much to talk about on our weekly Olympic sports roundup, all UB sports. The only thing that's happened outside of the basketball court since Thanksgiving is wrestling, who competed today on the road against Eastern Michigan. Pretty rough go. Um, Going on 2+ years without a MAC win. Thought they had a chance against the Eagles, and it was a pretty lopsided loss. Jake Gunning at heavyweight was the only one to win. That's going to be the bulk of what we're talking tonight in a shortened show. Through December, wrestling's really the only team in action. We'll usually have more than one competition per 2 weeks to talk about, but we're going to have probably a shortened shows until early January when other sports, track and field and tennis, get going. Before we get to wrestling, which I'll turn it over to John, who joined the site originally to talk wrestling, I do want to highlight that outside of NCAA competition, men's breaststroker from the swimming and diving team, Itai De La Vega, competed for his native Israel at the European Short Course Championships this past week. Israel was hosting the event, so I think that he got a bid because of that, because I'm sure they were guaranteed an extra berth or something in every event. But he swam both the 50 and 100-meter breaststroke races, finished second in his heat in both, but didn't advance to the semifinals. He was in the slowest heat and failed to advance. NCAA competition doesn't see the 50-meter or the 50-yard, NCAA's in yards, breaststroke, but it does see the 100-meter breaststroke, and Itai's times were about where you'd expect from his season bests right now if you extrapolate them out to a meters conversion rather than a yards conversion. So no great returning champion with a parade situation for Itai De La Vega like maybe we had with John Jones, late in the spring this past year. But he is another UB student athlete to compete on a world stage in international competition. I was trying to list them off the top of my head when I was writing the article about it, and I missed two. We've got Courtney Gilbert from the softball team, who will be a freshman this year, competing for Team Canada U18s in track and field. John Jones, of course, and Mike Morgan both competed internationally for Team USA. Tommy Murphy played for Team USA in baseball at the Pan American Games. Nate Rose from wrestling competed for Trinidad and Tobago at the World Championships. There's Itai De La Vega. Mirta Shepard and Nikola Rakicevic from women's and men's basketball, respectively, have competed for their national teams, Netherlands and Serbia. And now I feel like I'm forgetting one once again, John, but I don't know. We got a short show. It doesn't matter. Itai De La Vega representing UB and Israel in the European Championships. He's very, very good. We'll talk about him by January, about some of the things he does when he's competing for UB once again, once swimming and diving is back in action. Really big point of the show is wrestling. Like I said, pretty big loss to Eastern Michigan. We also have another weekend worth of open competition results, which is a little more encouraging from the guys redshirting. We'll talk about both over the next 20 minutes or so. John, start us off with whatever you'd like. You're a wrestling guy.
Yeah, I guess we'll start with Eastern Michigan. That's what happened today. Eastern, it was fairly lopsided, to say the least. Eastern won 30-3, and just for reference, last year's result was 22-10, an EMU win. As you said, the only UB win came from Jake Gunning, who improved to 7-2 overall in the season, 5-1 in dual meets. I'd say he's probably he and Colt Connor are probably the two most consistent wrestlers on the team. Cotton had a real back and forth match with Nick Barber. I think he's ranked like 20th or 22nd in the nation. They traded takedowns and escapes, and he just gave up. He gave up a takedown late, and that's kind of what sealed it. Coach Sussman praised Cotton, Muhammad McBride, and James Benjamin for coming out and wrestling hard. All of them, all three of them lost, but Cotton lost by 2 points, 8-6. McBride got a late takedown, or couldn't get a late takedown to win. He lost 3-2, and James Benjamin took on Anthony Abro for the second straight year. And Abro is ranked, I believe, as high as 9th in the nation, depending on where you look. He gave up a late escape, I think, in the closing seconds to lose 4-3. Outside of those guys, Coach Sussman wasn't really pleased, and the results really weren't that pretty.
And all we had to go on was Eastern Michigan's Twitter feed, and that sucked. Like, not really pretty, I think, is a generous way to put it, honestly. I'm losing John for a couple minutes because John has an irresponsible roommate. I'm gonna go full bore on this. John has to let someone in. As John said, Muhammad McBride, Colt Cotton, James Benjamin, competing against some higher ranked guys, wrestled well. McBride was down 3-0 and came back to 3-2. Cotton was in a back and forth match, and Benjamin actually had a late takedown in the third to tie it up at 3-3, and then gave up the escape in what must have been the last 15 seconds or so. Little bit disappointing there, and it is a 15-point swing from last year against Eastern Michigan. And last year, 2 of the wins last year came from people who are still on the team. Colt Cotton got a win, and Joe Ariola got a win at 184 last year. So it's not just a difference because Soria, because Max Soria got a win at 125 last year. That alone doesn't account for it. John's more knowledgeable about wrestling than I am, but a little bummed by this one. I think that even though half the MAC is ranked and 2 other teams were getting votes, I was really thinking that UB had improved relative to the MAC, and maybe they have. John seems to think that Eastern Michigan is much improved over last year on a team scale. But it's still a bit of a bummer to lose to Eastern. I've mentioned kind of in our back offices, John, that UB and Eastern have a very quiet all sports rivalry. Eastern has the most sports of any athletic department in the MAC, and UB is second, and so they overlap a lot more in general than any other 2 teams in the MAC. And on top of that, they each compete in this Colonial Athletic Association in rowing, and very quietly there's a rivalry there. And I don't like Eastern because their live stats are always terrible, and they very rarely provide complete information.
Yeah, their tweeting wasn't that great during the match. They said at 184 that it was Brent Perry wrestling instead of Joe Ariola.
Yeah. And there's no such thing as a Brent Perry. None of those things exist. I have to give them credit when whoever Stutzman or Fetchko or whoever's running the UB Bulls wrestling feed, they only give us weight class by weight class who won. And Eastern did give us kind of period by period updates today. I'm just spoiled by our ESPN3 production when we're at home.
Yeah.
And
oh wow. Well.
Yeah.
So that was that.
That was that. Open competition was more fun. Oh, go ahead, talk.
Yeah, I guess the only real positive takeaway is Jake Gunning's win, and James Benjamin again took it. Top 10 guy in the nation. He had him on the ropes and nearly forced overtime. So that's always a positive. But other than that, they're not really too much to take away. So hopefully it's a good kick in the pants for this upcoming Friday when
they're coming home. How does Gardner Webb stack up since we've got the time?
I haven't really followed them much this year.
Okay.
But historically they're a pretty good team. I believe we wrestled them last year. Let me just pull up last year's results, and we lost 32-7.
Oh, delightful.
So historically they're a pretty good program all around. They only have one guy that's ranked at all, so
we only have one guy that's ranked at all.
Yeah. I'm not sure how much they graduated off or anything like that.
Mhm.
And we faced them early in the year last year. Uh,
Okay.
so take it for what you will. So I guess we'll see what comes of it. Um, I'll hopefully be there Friday.
Oh yeah. But we'll have ESPN3 views at least as well, which will be nice. So we'll have another live thread for wrestling, which is I hope it will be better with ESPN3. Working just with Twitter updates isn't as fun. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah,
not a lot to say about the Eastern Michigan one for sure.
yeah. I think we can move on to the open competition, which was uh, very good. There was an open tournament at Niagara County Community College yesterday, the Thunder Wolves Open, which thankfully we found out about through Twitter that the UB Wrestling account, mentioned that some guys were there,
Yeah.
and I did.
Shout out to them this year. They've done, maybe I didn't look as hard last year, but I'm pretty sure we've been able to catch every open tournament this year. I think that UB Wrestling's done a good job of telling us, hey, well, telling the world, not specifically us, that
Mhm.
we've also got guys going here for open competition, and we've been able to find it. And kudos to these open competitions, we've been able eventually to have results from all of them. At the very least, we've heard who won their
Yeah.
brackets. So,
Uh, so yeah, the big winner was Justin Patrick yet again. Went 4-0 last week, or not last, was it last week?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago at the New York State Championships. Won a championship there, won a championship today, went 4-0 again. And by my count, the stats haven't been updated on the UB website, but by my count, he's at 17 or 18 win. He's in the 17-18 win range already on the season. Let me pull up statistics again. We had 9 guys there competing, and 8 of the 9 placed top 4. And only one person didn't place. Went 2-2 on the day. Everyone else was 3-1, 4-1, 4-2, or 5-1. Not too shabby. So Patrick, I assume he hasn't lost another match, so he's 17-7 by my count on the season. He's closely mirroring Jake Gunning's redshirt freshman season from a year ago, and he's won 3 open championships. This guy's the real deal.
Yeah. Do open competitions dry up later in the season, or because it seems to me that he's ahead of Gunning's pace? Wasn't Gunning like 28-8?
Yeah, he was 28-8 last year.
I mean, Patrick's already up to 18 and whatever, 1 or 2.
Yeah, 17-4.
4.
18-4. That's just a rough count on my part because the stats and stuff haven't been updated.
That's me tagging you on Twitter and your phone buzzing about it.
Phone goes off. Yeah, he's the real deal. I'm really excited to see how things shake out next year when he gets promoted up to compete for a starting job on the main roster. The log jam at the lower weights between 125 and like 149 it's just
going to get worse.
It got a lot more complicated, but it's a good problem to have for sure. Because we've seen injuries take their toll so far, and they happen. So it's always good to have a couple of guys that can really contribute, make a difference. And in addition to Patrick, 3 other guys got to the championship finals in their brackets. Rocco Russo at 133 pounds, Brett Perry at 184 pounds, and Eaton James at 285. And Russo and James both fell in the finals, both finished second, and Perry was first at the 184-pound bracket, went 4-0. And Perry and James are guys that especially James. James was kind of thrust into the lineup last year with Mike Phillips at 285, and there wasn't much, both as true freshmen, there wasn't much depth or experience there. So I think James is, oh goodness, I think he went 5-1, 5-1 or 6-1 at the New York State Championships, and he was fifth. Because if you lose one match, the consolation, the highest you can finish is fifth. Yeah. And yesterday he went 3-1. So by my rough count, he's like 9-2 by the open competitions that I found.
Yeah, that's a big improvement over last year. I mean, Gunning's got this spot locked down, barring injury, for the next 3.5 seasons. There's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm. But it's never a bad idea to have a really good backup.
Yeah. Someone John, want to highlight from the NC Open was Ryan Cromer at 174. You got Tyler Rill at 165, and then McBride at 174. And McBride looks real strong this year. He looks like he's putting a ton of work. He was one of the few guys who Stutzman praised this year. I thought he wrestled really well in Maryland when I saw him. And obviously everyone did pretty well at the Northeastern duels. Cromer finished third in a very large 174 bracket. And he had a pin over a guy from Jamestown who had won his first match by tech fall. He lost to the eventual champion at 174 by a single point. And then he came out in the consolation and won 7-4, and then had a 9-0 or 19-0 tech fall on the other semifinalist from the other side. And I don't know how much room there is to get in front of Muhammad McBride, who's wrestling very well this year and looks very, very strong. But I think Cromer got thrown into the starting lineup at times last year and was kind of in that Wally Maziar's like run of Wally McBride, kind of some inconsistency beyond times when just the upper weights were weak, period. There was inconsistency as well. And I'm seeing a lot stronger year from Cromer. And obviously McBride is only 19, but he's a senior and he's gone next year. I'm liking what I'm seeing from Ryan Cromer, who I don't know off the top of my head what year he is.
He's redshirting this year. So he's redshirting this year, so he'll still have 3 years of eligibility left. I believe last season he was at 157. I think he got plugged in at 157 at times. Because Wally got bumped up to 174, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Wally was up at 174, and that did not work. If I can be that blunt.
Yeah. And yeah, I think Cromer, by my count, so he was 3-1. I think he has over 10 wins in open competition. I just have to find my thing from see how many matches he won at the New York State Championships. I know he placed there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Or did he not wrestle there? Oh, he did. There he is. He was 4-1 there and 3-1 today. So he's 7-2 in his past 2 tournaments. So he's sitting at 12-7.
Yeah.
So far.
Solid. Yeah. Yeah. He's a guy he's another young guy, and he's at a spot, one of the few spots that has an upperclassman in the starting lineup right now. And so he's competing for a spot there in the next year. And he's listed right now between 165 and 174. I don't have a good mental image of him and whether he's a better fit to fit in for Tyler Rill at 165 or Muhammad McBride at 174. But Rill is a senior this year as well, right, John?
Rill, I believe, is a junior, a redshirt junior.
He's a redshirt junior. Okay. Yep. Well, then McBride's spot is there for – you are right. I looked it up. Yep. So Cromer's a local guy. He's from Newport. I'd say keep an eye on him over the next 12 months, see what kind of a position he can get into. Like I said, we're keeping this a little short. All we've got is wrestling. The only other guy I want to talk about, John, is Adrian Ferrari, a true freshman who Stutzman had said in some preseason things that he's really excited about. Obviously, in terms of true freshmen, Nate Rose and Tommy Forte have the real big names. And Forte, I haven't seen his name in a couple weeks now, whatever. But Adrian Ferrari's caught some attention preseason, and he's had a strong open season. He also Oh, he didn't win. He came in fourth in his weight class. But he had one hell of a run after getting pinned early in his first match. And then he went and he won 4 straight out of there. Do you have any insight on him? Because all I can do is list his results.
I believe this was his first competition that that I've seen so far today. It's promising. He came from New York City, Long Island area. One of the better hotbeds in New York State. Really strong, big, thick built guy. I watched some of his tape from high school, and he's another one to kind of watch for next year at 157. That's another weight. Alex Smythe, he's been out. He's going to be out for the foreseeable future until probably January. He's still dealing with a broken jaw. He was supposed to be the starter going into the season. And really, these guys that are in the open competition now, it's really a chance to get better, to improve, acclimate to the college game, and it's really an audition. It's an audition to the coaches, say, hey, I belong. And
yeah,
and some of the guys are really taking advantage of it. I mean, Justin Patrick already with 17, 18 wins. I don't know how you could keep him out of the starting lineup next year if he keeps winning, at this torrid pace that he is.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned at 174, Austin Weagle's another name to keep an eye on for next year. He's a redshirt sophomore, I believe. Yeah, he's a redshirt sophomore, so he'll still have 2 more years of eligibility. And he placed 4th in the A bracket at 174 pounds at the New York State Championships. He went 5-2 there. So he's another guy you really got to keep your eye on too. So there's going to be some pretty good battles coming up internally for starting positions, especially at the 157, 174 pound weight classes. And there's always the threat that, maybe Tommy Forte bumps up to 157 next year. He wrestled 152 in high school. I'm certain he could make that jump. Because he's another one. He's just too good to keep off the mat.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, good things coming from the open tournaments. I'm really glad that we're able to cover it a bit more than we have in years past.
Yeah, it's been good to follow these guys and get more excited about them. You were right that Ferrari, this was his first competition, so he had a 4-2 weekend. That's pretty solid. This was also Ian James's first competition, at least according to the stats on UB's site. Which seems wrong to me.
He was at the New York State Championships. He was 6-1.
That's right. I remember that.
So he's 9-2 on the season.
The other guys that they've got listed as no competitions, I think, are right in Keegan Harris, Corey Hollister, Alex Smythe, who's injured, and Nolan Terrence, the New York State champion at heavyweight last year in high school. Or Division II champion, whatever, large school, small school stuff. But yeah, very few guys have real poor sub-500 records. Looking up and down the list, really. Which is good. That's what we've got. If you're looking at Eastern Michigan, the results against Eastern Michigan, that really stinks. And based on John Stutzman's response, it certainly seems like he was a bit surprised by how flat his guys came out. And that's really the most encouraging thing I can take of it, is that coach is upset. I think some of the winning we got a bit complacent about wrestling. I certainly did. I started to get used to John Stutzman smiling, and that's always a dangerous thing. He's not a man who smiles. At least.
We've seen him when he gets upset, and we won't like him when he is upset.
Yeah, it's a scary thing. I assume that he does smile. He has a child. but he doesn't do it in his functions as a wrestling coach. And so this is a check back to reality. Open competitions, like John said, it's really nice to be able to cover those more in depth this year, at least pay attention to them more. How much we cover them depends on how much time we have, but we do watch them and catch guys and how they're doing. Some really exciting things there. As much as we can look ahead to next November and the blue and white internal match next year, it's looking like there's going to be some real hard competitions for spots in the next 2 seasons. Wrestling's all we had today with that brief interlude from Itai de la Vega and international competition, swimming and diving. For the month of December, wrestling's all we are going to have. My plan right now is to keep the shows going every week. Between now and next show, we will have 2 wrestling duels, home match on Friday against Gardner Webb, who beat us pretty good last season, and then a home match a road match, another road MAC match on Sunday against Kent State at 2. Lost to Kent State last year. I think it was a similar result, something like a low 20 score to like a 10, 9, or 10. John, I think.
Yeah. Gosh, that was. I think you and I were at that match together.
We were there.
It was 30-10 against Kent.
They got all the way up to 30, huh? Well, that'll be another chance. Kent State, I think, has a few ranked guys. I think they are a ranked program, or at least were in the preseason rankings. We'll talk about it more when the time comes, but we'll also talk about a recap next week. If any other news comes through, we'll talk about it, but we're probably going to stick to half-hour shows since all we're going to have to talk about is wrestling through December, but we should be able to stay weekly. Thanks for watching. I'm Matt Gritzmacher. I'm joined, as always, by John McWhinney. This is the Bull Run Olympic Rundown every Sunday night. Tomorrow night, Monday, we will be back with our regular Bowls and Beers podcast, which is shifting from football season to basketball season now. We'll have a show immediately after the final buzzer of the men's game versus Iowa State, and that will be at least myself and probably Robbie and Drew, our newer guys who write for basketball, and we'll see if we get anyone else. But tune in tomorrow night. We're going to be back on the Monday night schedule talking basketball now through the winter and spring. Thanks for watching. Have a good night. Have a good week. John and I will see you next Sunday to talk more wrestling.